Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Arthur Vaughn. I am the Health and Wellness Chairman for the 100 Black Men of North Metro Atlanta, and I'd like to thank you for the next in our virtual health and wellness series, Understanding Mental Health and Dispelling the Misconceptions. Our presenter this evening is Ms. Marrionet Humes, LMSW. Did I get that right? All right. She is an expert in the mental health field, working with both youth and adults to help us all manage our self-care and to what I call silence the shame so we can make conversations and discussions around mental health as normal as we do about the score of last night's game. With no further ado, I'd like to turn this evening's program over to Ms. Marrionet Humes. If you have questions, please place them in the chat and we will bring them forward at the appropriate time. Please mute your phones so we can minimize any background noise. Mute your whatever device you're on, to minimize background noise so everyone can hear and benefit from this presentation. Thank you again for attending, and I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Humes at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Vaughn. Good evening, everybody. Once again, I'm happy to be here and present tonight. And what I am going to be presenting on is the myths about mental health and dispelling the myths about mental health. In our community, we find that a lot of people do not seek assistance because of the stigma behind mental health and mental illness. So without further ado, let's get started. Let me share my screen. Okay, dispelling, let me just get everything situated on my computer. Dispelling the myths about mental health. Okay. Myths about mental health. Some of the myths that we have about mental health is, especially in the African American community, is if we just pray about it and give it to Jesus, whatever the situation is going on, or the illness that's going on that's preventing that child or that adult, that individual in the family from being productive, if we just give them to Jesus and pray about it, that it'll be fixed, that individual will be fixed. Although I am spiritual, I'm a Christian, and I do believe in prayer, a lot of times prayer in addition to mental health assistance or mental illness assistance is needed. So that's one myth we have, that if you pray about it, that it'll go away. Another myth we have is that Black people, they don't have those issues. You know, sometimes I know when I was a little younger, I used to hear, oh, that's a white person's problem. Especially surrounding suicide, that was something you heard, only the white people do suicide. No, you know, it does not look at race. It does not look at socioeconomic backgrounds. And it's just what's going on in that individual's life, and that individual not being able to maintain or have anybody to speak to. Admitting you are struggling mentally means you are a weak man. We find that a lot with the male population, where if they break down, if they cry, if they say, you know, I can't do this, I'm not strong to take care of this right now, it's either a cop out that they don't want to do it, or they're a weak person. And that's not true. You know, men as well as women, there are struggles in life, there are stresses in life. And sometimes it gets to the point where you have to reach out. You may need that support group, or you may need that individual counseling. There's nothing wrong with that. Just sometimes you have to look at your plate and see how much is on that plate. And then you may need somebody to help you begin to assess each item on that plate. And that's the exercise that I do with kids too. I do the plate exercise where I have them write everything they feel is stressing them out, put it on a plate, and then each week we'll pull off that plate and see what it is this week that we're going to address in order to lessen the load or take something else off of that plate. Another myth we have is you're crazy if you admit you're having some challenges. Oh, you're crazy. You need to go to the psych ward, or, you just can't function. No, just because things are going on, that does not make you crazy. You not going and seeking help. Oh yeah, that will make you crazy. And a lot of times that's where you see a lot of people, you see a lot of homeless people, you see just people just losing control, is because they did not seek assistance, or they have not sought it, or if they have, they weren't consistent with it, thereby creating, it's like the trash can. You put garbage in the trash can, and if you don't take the garbage out every night, it's gonna overload, and eventually when you go to lift that top up to put more trash in, everything is just gonna fall out and just be all over the place. It's the same concept with us as humans, as people, not having that outlet, and think that we can just take it all in and everything will be fine. Also, you find a lot that people say, oh, well, they're looking for attention. They just want attention. And we ignore the signs. A lot of times before we get to the 11th hour, there are a lot of cues and red flags that go up, certain behaviors that aren't normal, or you see a significant change. And instead of paying attention to those, sometimes those little identifiers, we push it to the side and we say, oh, they're attention seeking. Oh, just leave them alone, or just tell them, give them a little attention and go on about your business and they'll be okay. So that's another myth that we need to dispel, because a lot of times those behaviors, sometimes they could be attention seeking, but if it's too consistent and you always see it and it's a significant change, then that's an indicator that something is wrong and we need to pause. We need to stop and dig a little deeper with that individual. Hey, what's going on? You okay? It's okay to check in on people, Okay, this is a question that I have. The young men, they did very good in answering this question. What is mental health? Is there a difference between mental health and mental illness? The difference between the two isn't clear for some people, which further perpetuate the myths of mental health. Does anybody want to give a stab at what the difference is between the two? Okay. And I'm not sure if you're putting it in the chat, because I can't really see it didn't pop up. So if somebody can let me know that something came up.
Certainly, I will do that. There's nothing in the chat at the moment, but I'm monitoring it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're gonna move on. Now here, the mental illness. Mental illness is when someone is diagnosed with a mental disorder. It significantly affects how a person feels, thinks, behaves, and interacts with other people. The individual finds it challenging to form and maintain relationships in majority of their systems. And systems is just how that person engaged in different environments. So we look at 5 systems, which will be spiritual, individual, family, self, and community. So how does that affect whatever's going on? How does that affect that individual? Like, for instance, anxiety. Some people have levels of anxiety that's so intense that they no longer want to leave their home. They no longer want to be around family. And it gets to the point where they begin to hyperventilate, think they're having a heart attack, or it just becomes so overwhelming that they isolate themselves. And then you see it begins to affect all of their systems. Mental health. Mental health is a state of well-being where one is able to realize their potential. The individual can cope with everyday life stresses. They're productive and can make contributions in a multi-systemic manner. Once again, that systemic is the systems. So they can operate in all systems, or at least 4 out of 5. Now, does everybody's mental health, do we have bad mental health? Yes. Do we have good mental health? Yes. Do we have a fluctuation of it? Yes. It just all depends on how we're dealing with those stresses at the time. When we talk about mental health, we're talking about our mental well-being, our emotions, our thoughts and feelings, our ability to solve problems and overcome difficulties, our social connections, and our understanding of the world around us. Once again, we kind of have that understanding and we can bounce back. In America, there's estimated 57.5 million American adults experiencing mental illness each year. Although mental illness appears across race, ethnicity, and gender, some groups appear to experience a higher burden associated with mental illness. For instance, African Americans make up only 12% of the population of the United States, yet they make up 18.7% of those affected by mental illness. And we see that a lot because, once again, we have these myths, and a lot of times it can be, it's cultural. So they don't seek the help that they need, or family members sweep it under the rug, or what goes on in this house stays in this house. Oh, Uncle Joe he's just a little strange, and and we don't address the issues. So that's where it puts us at a deficit. Also, finances. A lot of times, individuals don't have the means to pay for certain services or medical coverage that will cover mental health. So then that puts them at a deficit as well. So they don't seek the help that they need. As I stated before, beliefs about I'm sorry, guys. That went back to, it's moving too fast. Let me see if I can go back. Well, basically what that said is, it was saying that our belief systems drives how we address our belief systems drive how we address our mental health or our mental illness. We have a lot of cultural, ethnic factors, and with that, it prevents a lot of people from seeking help. That stigma is there, and so that kind of is that barrier that prevents them. It's okay to seek help. That's what we want everybody to understand, parents and children alike. It's okay. If you have a child that needs help, if you have a mate that needs help, it's okay. The best thing for those individuals is to know that they have support. They have what we call informal support, and that's your friend, your aunt, your uncle, your mom, your dad. Formal support will be somebody like myself, a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist. But when you have individuals that their mental health is declining and or they have mental illness, the biggest thing is knowing that they have support amongst their community, their systems. That can be another concern if they feel that they cannot communicate their struggles and they begin to internalize, that makes it worse as well. So knowing that there is somebody that they can talk to, that helps a lot of times too. Here are some tips about mental illness. Let someone you trust know if you are struggling. Once again, if you see something that's a little different about somebody that you normally know does not act this way, then, you know, say, hey, if you need to talk, give me a call. If things are a little rough, give me a call. I'm here for you. A lot of times that sentence, that one sentence is enough to release the waterfall for that person and say, okay, I can pick up the phone and I can just let loose, and that person will be able to help me. And that in itself helps that individual's mind, because now they're on the right course to get help. Number two, seek professional help. There's nothing wrong with meeting with a therapist, a counselor. Um, we also have behavior aids for the children, psychiatrists, psychologists, support groups. We can have support groups. You could be in a support group as a family member who's supporting someone with mental illness. Therefore, it'll give you the tools that you need in what that support looks like for that individual. Make sure you're compliant with medication management. We see this a lot, especially with the youth. And that's why a lot of times in the school system, you see a lot of kids that are being expelled and have to go to alternative school because they're not compliant with their medication, and they are diagnosed with certain mental illnesses. A lot of times they have multiple diagnoses, and when they do not take that medication, they struggle. A lot of times the teachers don't understand that diagnosis. And so when that child acts out, they don't have a plan of action. And then what they do is they respond to the child in kind. And then it escalates to the point where the child gets expelled and have to go to alternative school. And it just seems like a never ending process. But a lot of times, if we make sure that our family, whether it be our children, our mates, are compliant with the medication management, they can be productive members of society. Tips for mental health. Having healthy relationships helps to maintain good mental health. Seeking professional help, individual or group. Like I said before, they kind of go hand in hand. Making sure that you are connecting with positive individuals, positive interactions, help to keep the mind in a manner of less stress. Self-care, taking time out for yourself. You know, we as professionals, we have to practice self-care because we take on everybody's struggle trying to assist them in being productive. So as professionals, we need, and we also have in place where the psychiatrist has a psychiatrist, the social worker has the social worker, the counselor has a social worker, and that's all a part of our self-care so that we can, you know, fill that vessel back up and we can get back out there, because an empty vessel can't supply nobody anything. So definitely self-care, utilization of coping strategies, deep breathing, self-talk. This is something that I practice a lot myself. I encourage the families that I work with, the children that I work with. It's okay when you sit there and say, should I do this? Is this something that I'm going to benefit from? You can ask yourself that. It's okay. That's definitely a coping strategy, because it allows you to stop and think and then ask yourself, is this healthy or unhealthy? How am I going to benefit from this? Or if I do this, what will be the consequences? So that's a good coping strategy as well. Eating healthy, exercising. And the eating healthy part, I definitely stress that with my families, with their young children, with the young children that we work with, because a lot of times we have individuals that might be allergic to gluten. And we find that gluten does have an impact on that brain. A lot of times it's like brain fog, or they don't think, or they're too impulsive. And so if you change a lot of their diets, reduce a lot of the sugar, a lot of the heavy starches, it can help kind of clear their mind some. So we do find that with the younger children. Positive peer socialization. Make sure you get connected with positive people. Make sure, you know, You support your spouse or your mate in positive socializations. You know, if you know that they're depressed, you don't want to take them and constantly taking them to a bar where, you know, there's constant flow of alcohol or something that's going to help continue to bring them down or take them to a altered state. Not to say that they can't have a drink or whatever, but you have to be mindful of that individual's needs. Stress management, once again, life is not without stress. There will always be stress. How we manage that stress dictates how healthy or unhealthy our mental health will be. Meditation. Meditation is excellent. I started yoga. And I started it because I hurt my shoulder with my grandson. And in the process of learning yoga, the meditation piece was there. And I found that I started to become more calmer, more, you know, when I have deadlines, it's no longer that frantic going, trying to get everything together. And it's like, okay, stop, take a deep breath, close your eyes, think. And then you'll find that you'll be able to put things in perspective a little better because you slowed your mind down to think and say, okay, one step at a time. Let me see. Okay, I'm trying to get this to the right side. Having good mental health isn't only about being happy and assured 100% of the time and not acknowledging any problems. It's all about being able to live and cope well despite problems. Just as it's possible to have poor mental health but no mental illness, it's entirely possible to have good mental health even with the diagnosis of mental illness. The two can coexist as mental illness often occurs in episodes, and the same individual can have good mental health because they are able to cope with medication and therapy and have a healthy outlook. With the right supports and tools, anyone can live well, however they define well, and find meaning, contribute to their communities, and work towards their goals. So as you can see, mental health and mental illness can work hand in hand. But I think we've gotten over the years, we've gotten so used to saying mental health, and we're putting that mental illness underneath that too. But in actuality, it's it is two different areas. And that's what I wanted to get across to everybody, in dispelling that myth. We have the Georgia Crisis Hotline, and I want to go back because let me see. I need to find. There's a video that I think is excellent. Okay, let me see. I don't know. Can you guys still see my screen, or did it disappear?
It disappeared.
Okay, let me try to get it back up. Did it pop back up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let me see. How do I make this bigger? Let's see if I can get it.
There's a box in the upper right-hand corner next to the X that should make it bigger.
Okay, let's see. Did it make it? No, it didn't.
Changed it.
Okay. Let me do it. I'm gonna leave it right here because I'm not that savvy with the technology, and my children are not here to help me out. So so I'm gonna leave it like this so I don't mess it up. But let me see if we can get it started. This is a great video, by the way, too. So can you guys see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
When you look at me, what do you see? Now, I'm gonna go through some of the things that I typically hear. To the very astute, I usually get I'm black, I'm bearded, and I'm strong. Mm-hmm. I also get I look like NBA superstar James Harden. I'm most definitely the poor version.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I was trying to make it bigger. Sorry about that. It should be coming back.
When you look at me, what do you see? Now, I'm gonna go through some of the things that I typically hear. To the very astute, I usually get I'm black, I'm bearded, and I'm strong. I also get I look like NBA superstar James Harden. I'm most definitely the poorer version. I get hip hop superstar, Emmy Award winner, Donald Glover, AKA Childish Gambino. Yeah, that too, right? And last but not least, I get Curtis Jackson, AKA 50 Cent. Now, one of my goals is definitely to get rich or die trying. I think Sally Mae is putting the emphasis on or die trying, right? But see, what I don't hear is, Phil, you look like somebody that lives with depression and anxiety. Phil, you look like somebody that was suicidal for 15 years, every day, 5 to 6 times a day. They don't say, Phil, you look like somebody that was driving on Interstate 95, wanting to crash your car to end your life. No, because see, here in America, when we think about mental health, we think about the homeless man who's walking the streets, talking nonsensically to themselves. We think about the white celebrity who takes their life via suicide. We think about the white mass murderer who goes into a high school and takes the lives of innocent children. Or it's usually your president who loves to tweet venom from the hip. But see, rarely does the conversation speak of a father of 2 kids, someone who possesses a master's in exercise science, a master's in social work, somebody pursuing a doctorate. Rarely is it a person of color. Rarely is it a black man like myself, until now, because black mental health matters. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is black mental health and why is it differentiated amongst racial and ethnic lines? Black mental health are the individual and collective experiences that influence the wellness of a community. Trauma is the biggest influencer of black mental health. We're talking about historical trauma, slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, the Tuskegee experiment, up until present day trauma. When you see somebody that looks like you get killed in their home, rest in peace, Botham Jean. When you see somebody who's living with mental wellness issues get killed by the police, rest in peace, Laquan McDonald of Chicago, Illinois. Or when you see somebody that looks like you get killed by somebody that looks like you, rest in peace, Triple X Tentacion. See, when we talk about trauma, trauma is unique to the individual, and I'm no different. There were 3 impactful traumatic situations that I've experienced in my life outside of the genetic predisposition, because my grandmother lived with schizophrenia. I hearken back to being in 8th grade, 13 years of age. On the way to school, my mother has a nervous breakdown. She's crying. She's pulling at her clothes and her hair. She's cursing. I felt helpless because I couldn't help her, or I couldn't help myself. And see, I was expected to continue to go into school that day and achieve. It's funny, when I first started telling this story, I told my mother, listen, I'm telling the story of when you had a nervous breakdown. And she said, Phil, that didn't happen. Now, I know I'm getting older. I have a few grays, right? But I swear I remember that. And then she called me a week later and she said, Phil, I didn't know you remembered that. As if I wouldn't remember the most traumatic situation that I've experienced in my life. And that typically happens. We're often expected to just continue on because we are so resilient as a people, because we do survive, and we've survived for hundreds of years. And I was expected to survive and go into school that day and perform. And I did, because like many of us, I learned how to suppress my emotions and my feelings. But what if I didn't? What if I went into school and I started arguing with peers and fighting? What if I started arguing with the teachers? What if I did criminalistic behaviors within the community? Would I be deemed incorrigible and unable to be in the school setting, in the community setting? Or would anybody care that I just experienced this traumatic situation that has impacted me? Fast forward to my 12th grade year, 17 years of age, January 2001. My mother said, Phil, come downstairs. She said, Phil, your brother Bobby died. And I started crying. That was probably the only healthy coping skill that I had at the time, right? Because being a product of the hip hop culture, hip hop tells me when somebody dies, you either go out and get some liquor or you go get a rest in peace tattoo. Well, I wasn't old enough to drink. That would happen once I got to college, right? But I went out and I got this rest in peace tattoo. As if that was going to do something, if that was going to take away the pain of losing a primary relationship. It didn't. And people ask me, Phil, well, how did your brother die? Say, the opioid epidemic is popular now. But in the Black community, in the hip hop community, especially amongst Black male, it's always existed. He was one who liked to use codeine and Xanax. I don't know what he was trying to cope with. I will never know. I went to school that Monday because I didn't have anybody to say, Phil, stay home. Because my mother was going through it because she just lost her only child. And I went to school feeling all of this emotion. And I remember it like yesterday. I was sitting in computer class. Miss Williams, my computer teacher, came up to me. And I don't know what she said. She said, Phil. She could have said, Phil, what was the score of the Eagles game last night? I let her have it. I blacked on her. I cursed her out. Why? Because I had all this built up anger, all this built up rage. Because see, when we're talking about depression and anxiety for Black men especially, it doesn't look like somebody laying in bed for 6 and 7 days on end. No, it manifests itself through anger and rage. I ended up getting suspended that day. And Ms. Williams and I were able to laugh at the situation years later because I was able to cope with it and understand what I was feeling. But again, it was a moment in time that impacted my life. My third and final story happened at Bloomsburg University in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. Again, we remember traumatic situations, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I call it the Jew story, right? Because when I go fill out job applications and it says, have you ever been convicted of a crime? As long as it doesn't say misdemeanor or felony, I can ignore it if it says that. But if it says, have you ever been convicted of a crime, I have to check it off. And then I put, well, it all started with a cup of juice. And then the employers, they laugh like, oh man. And I laugh like, ha, ha, ha. That's my life. So the Jew story is, I was coming from the gym to go get me something to eat. I got my food. I paid for it, emphasis on pay. And you know how you go to McDonald's, they give you a cup and you can go to the fountain and get whatever drink you want. And I did that and I tasted it to see if it was watered down. But see, when you go to a predominantly white institution like Bloomsburg University, it seems like they have all the minorities' names on a list. And the school police officer said, Phil, that's stealing. Mind blown. And me having this anger, this frustration that's built up over years of trauma, and me not being able to express myself in a healthy way, I blacked on her just like I did Miss Williams. Unbeknownst to me, that would lead to 20 plus charges. I ended up going to jail that night. I ended up getting expelled from school. I ended up doing a weekend in jail because, listen, they say you'll get judged by a jury of your peers. With the average age in that community being 60 and over, it wasn't going to be a jury of my peers. But I needed that experience. I needed it. And I needed it because it told me that, Phil, I have to do something different. I ended up appealing to get back into Bloomsburg University, and people knew me, so people wanted me back. And so I got back, and I was focused. One day, my psychology professor, Dr. Cambone Camara, God bless the dead, he said, Phil, come talk to me about anything, anytime. And I took him up on that. I went and talked to him, not to talk about school. I went to talk to him about a young lady I had been courting. right? And I wanted to understand, why didn't she want me? So I went to his office. I'm like, listen, I bought her sneakers. I took her to the movies. I took her to dinner. Well, my mom took her to dinner and all those things because I didn't have a job. Thanks, Mom. But he said to me, Phil, in life, you change to get something or to keep something. I'm like, man, what are you talking about? Little did I know that that would become my mantra, that I realized I had to change. I had to work on my wellness so I can be whole. It took approximately 10 years, because that's the average length of time that they say somebody who lives with mental wellness issues, that's the time that it takes for them to come to grips with it and to seek treatment. For Black people, I think it's much longer. And so within those 10 years, I've been on medication, which quelled the suicidal ideations. They're no more. I go to therapy every week. Hi, Dr. Val. It's been so critical for me in my wellness because I decided to go from living to thriving. To my Black brothers and sisters, you too deserve to go from living to thriving. We no longer have to wear the mask. We're survivors. There's help now. We can get help and walk out there with our heads held high and get the treatment that we need so we can go from living to thriving. To my non-Black brothers and sisters, will you now view the Black person that you come in contact with and might be in a negative way and recognize that, you know what, they might have gone through something, or to see them when they excel, what they had to go through to get to that point? Or will mental health continue to be viewed in America as Kate Spade, as Anthony Bourdain, as Chester Bennington, as Robin Williams? Would it now include actors Sam Sarpong, Lee Thompson Young? Will it now include 10-year-old Ashanti Davis, who took her life because of bullying? Will it now represent Emmanuel Sloan, who's the reason why I'm here? Because at 19 years of age, he decided to take his life by jumping in front of a train. This isn't an indictment on you or on America. This is just a public service announcement that's stating that we're here and we deserve to live and to thrive. Thank you.
And this I like this video because it speaks to the concerns about mental health, where for so long, especially in our community, we didn't pay attention to it. Because of the myths, we did not address it. And instead, what we did was we swept it under the rug. So that's, and I believe, and it's just my belief, that's when you started to see more African Americans, especially the teenage population, the suicide rate start to increase because they did not know how to cope. They did not know how to ask for help. And a lot of times their behaviors were indicators, but we as parents, we didn't pay attention to it. And then it's only after either they attempted or actually went through that we said, well, what happened? What was wrong? I know that they might have been doing this, or they might have, they started hanging out with the wrong crowd, or they just started acting differently. Then you begin to put the pieces together. And then say, well, maybe I should have. Well, I would like to educate parents and individuals on, it's okay to seek mental health. It's okay if you're noticing your child acting a little differently. Hey, what's going on? What's wrong? This is a different day and age that we live in. We're in a technology age. So they have access and can get into all kinds of stuff without us even knowing. We think we have the passcodes and we got all of the sites that they go into, but a lot of times they have a site for us, and then they have the real site in which they go in. So you have to really be cognizant of their behaviors. what they're doing, what they're not doing, what seems different. And it's okay to sit down and, hey, what's going on? Why don't we talk about your day to day? You know, any challenges, any good days, good events that occurred, just to get them in the habit of feeling okay with coming to communicate with you. And just like you would do this with your child, you can do it with your cousin, your brother, your sister, your mate, your spouse. You know, hey, what's going on today? You know, because sometimes we don't know what people are internalizing and we take them for granted. And just that one sentence, that one question, like I stated before, can open up a floodgate. And then that's when you're in a position to say, you know what, I think that we need to go and seek help. And saying we by letting them know that I'm here to support you and I'm going to go down that road with you. You want the help, I'll be there to support you to get the help. And help support them in that journey. Like I said before, mental health and mental illness can go hand in hand, as you see in the young man. You know, now he's thriving. He's thriving because he's addressed his mental illness through medication and therapy, thereby increasing his mental health. So now he can be productive and in his multi-systemic life, you know. So because when one falters, if you have mental illness and that falters, it's definitely going to affect how you interact. It is going to affect that mental health component. Yes. Yes.
This is Ron G. I'm helping to monitor the chat, and we got a couple of things that came in.
Okay.
What would you say? It's like a chicken or the egg scenario when it comes to mental illness and self-medication like drug or alcohol addiction. Does one come before the other?
Now that can be tricky, because now if they are so heavily into the substance abuse, before we can address that mental illness, we're going to have to see how we can get that substance abuse piece under control. Because if they are inebriated or under the influence heavily, then we know that the medication management piece is not going to take effect. You know, so it's a case by case situation. It depends on that individual, but sometimes you can work it together, and that's why the support groups. You have the AA, I think it's the, what is it called? Al-Anon. You have just a whole bunch of support groups out there. And a lot of the treatment facilities, they have groups in addition to medication management. So it can help that individual train that brain to get back on target. Now, is it going to be easy? By no means. It will be a struggle for that individual and their family members that are supporting them, because this is an addiction that or substance that they use to kind of cover the pain, medicate the pain. But at the end of the day, once they come down off of whatever it is they're using, that pain is still there. So helping them to identify that substance is not going to take away from that pain. We have to address that pain, and we have to address that substance abuse. And most times it's the substance abuse we will have to curb, get it under control enough where then we can begin to work on that mental illness and get that under control.
Here's one more question. That was great. What can be done to overcome stigmas that prevent many in the Black community from seeking help?
Communicating, letting people know, oh, it's not a problem. Sometimes people will say something just to get feedback or see what somebody might say. Sometimes we kind of skirt away from it, but just communicate. Hey, you know what? If you know somebody's going, hey, you know what? I think, a great therapist might help you in that situation. And whatever that situation is, we have groups for everything. You know what I'm saying? So being able to communicate that with one another, I think that will begin the process, because then it kind of takes that negative connotation off of it, where nobody wants to speak about it, or we're not. Even though I see there's a problem, I'm not going to speak on it. I'm not going to refer you. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to offend you. No, validating that person's struggle, but then supporting them by saying, you know what, there's have you ever considered speaking to somebody professionally? Have you ever considered, or I know somebody, or hey, I see a therapist for this. Would you like me to refer you to them or give you their number so you can reach out? So that communication piece about it, I think if each one teach one, it begins to lift the stigma of the mental health concern.
We could start normalizing it. I got one more. Sometimes we're able to camouflage depression really well while we're in public, right? And, you know, in other words, you can be the life of the party while in a social setting, yet every day go home and you're considering committing suicide. Are there hidden signs that we need to be aware of?
Well, sometimes when you see somebody so happy all the time and always the life of the party, that's an indicator that there's something else deeper there. Because we know in life, every day is not a walk in the park. Every day is not a party. You know what I'm saying? We have our ups and downs, and that's the normal, natural way of life, you know, to have a good day and some bad days mixed up in there, some days. But when you have somebody who's always trying to be the life of the party, who always, you know, everything is together, they always, every hair in place, a lot of times, and especially if you're real close to them, a lot of times you stop and say, well, I don't, you know, I think I'm in good spirits all the time, and I'm not always in a good mood. Are you okay? Is everything good? You know, and in the first few times that individual, because they're masking, they might say, oh, I'm good, girl. You know, but you once again communicate, hey, well, you know what? Okay, that's good to hear. But if you need to talk, you know I'm here, right? You can pick up that phone anytime you get ready. You need to and call me. I'm here for you. If you just want to talk, if you want to vent, whatever it may be, I'm here. So just putting that out in the atmosphere will help them too. But you are right. Sometimes, you know, they mask it. And a lot of times we look at it, we're like, oh, they fine. Oh, they fine. But sometimes we might have to stop and say, wait a minute, they always like that. And that doesn't appear realistic. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm going to go back some more because I want to, right here. Let me move this over. These are the hotlines that we, can y'all see the numbers?
Yes.
Okay. Georgia Crisis and Access Line is called GCAL. We use that a lot when we work with our families. We use it. Well, I don't work for DFACS anymore, but when I used to work for DFACS, I would instruct my family, my workers to give this hotline information to the families in case there's a crisis. The position I'm in now, my team that I supervise, this is something when we walk through the door, this is a resource we give the family. This is if the family's in crisis, we recommend you call this number ASAP. Unless there's a danger, that individual is presenting a danger to themselves and others, you will call 911, but you will let them know you need a mental health officer to come on the scene because this individual does have mental health concerns. So this way it can kind of prepare the officer or the department of when they get on site, what they're looking at, as opposed to just coming through with guns blazing, especially in light of what's been going on in the world today in our community. The National Alliance of Mental Illness, we call it NAMI. That is a great resource if you have individuals with all types of diagnoses. You can reach out to them. They will definitely tell you what's available in your area. If you have a child with autism, they will connect you to, give you several links and connections and resources for autistic children, autistic individuals, ADHD, you name it. You can reach out to that helpline and they can get you connected. The difference with NAMI is it is not 24 hours a day because they don't deal with crisis. It's more resources, whereas GCAL is crisis, where they come in and, you know, oftentimes they might have to what we call a 1013, which is if that individual is so far out, they cannot make decisions for themselves. That provide that professional that comes out will deem them incompetent, and then they could be hospitalized, where they can then either start the medication process or get them stabilized enough to find out what's going on and do a battery test and stuff like that. So yeah, but in the end, mental health, mental illness, you know, more and more people have it. Now we just need to, like Ron said, we need to normalize it. It's okay if you have it. You know, it's getting connected to the resources you need in order to allow you to be productive. You know, we need to look at it as like a medical condition. You know, oh, I have high blood pressure, I have diabetes. You know, we okay with that. Oh, I take my medication, my insulin, I monitor what I eat. You know, but the minute we say, you know, I might have clinical depression or I might have schizophrenia, everybody back up and looking at you sideways and thinking that, oh, well, you need to be in your own little box, pushed to the side out of society. No, it's the same thing. It's just, you know, you may need medication and support groups and therapy in order for you to thrive. Whereas somebody that with diabetes, they need their metformin and their insulin in order to be productive and thrive in the community. So once we begin to normalize it in that sense, I think we may begin the process of decreasing a lot of individuals who are out there and not getting the help they need, especially in the African-American community.
Thank you for that, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
We have two more questions in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
How would one find these similar crisis lines or numbers in other states, or would one just contact the NAMI?
Well, NAMI is for mental illness. So if you have somebody that's diagnosed with a mental disorder, they're national, okay? So they can get information from you all over. And they may even have some international connections there. I'm not too sure about that, but I think they do. But if you reach out to them, they have a plethora of information that they can provide you with. They usually have conferences. I don't know last year and this year, due to the pandemic, I don't know if they're going to do it virtual, but where they have so much information for you. Now the crisis hotline, I guess you can Google crisis hotline. So whatever state you're in. So if you're in New York crisis hotline, and that should be able to give you the 1-800 number. So I would start off like that with whatever state you're in. You put that state and then the crisis hotline, and you should be able to get some information.
Okay. All right. And last question we have in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a success story you can share similar to the speaker in the video?
I do have one where we had a family, and it was a lot of different things going on in that family, where it was homelessness was going on, connecting to the wrong crowd, mom not being able to maintain employment. And so we found that this child was becoming more and more like pulling away and doing just the opposite. And let me go back a little bit. This child was adopted. So what happened was, it was a kinship adoption. So they did have connection to their mom, their bio mom, but they were with their adoptive family member. And so with all of this going on, not being able to be with their bio mom was a substance abuser. Then the adoptive mom, the stresses that were going on with the adoptive mom, it just kind of spiraled out of the control. But once we were able to get in there and work with this family, and we assessed that, it's not just the child being adopted and knowing they're adopted. It's all of these other stresses, because as adults, sometimes we don't realize that our children take on a lot of our stress too. They trying to figure it out while we trying to figure it out. And you can just imagine this child who's been already removed from one home, going to another, and now they don't have a home because they're, finances, and they're homeless. So now the fear factor comes in, because am I going to be taken again? Where are we going to go? What am I going to do? What are my friends going to think? And then they become, instead of showing that fear, they cover with anger and begin to do things that what we call acting out. And so we were able to peel back a lot of those layers. We were able to find housing. We were able to get them counseling. And that individual then went on to be a junior peer in a group, so that, they can connect with younger people in their age bracket who may be experiencing some of these things. Now, it wasn't an overnight process. It was some time that we were working with this family. I would say about 9 to 12 months. So, but the first thing we had to do was we had to secure their, safety, as far as, where they're going to stay. Because if we can't solve that problem, then we can't even address everything else. So, we had to take it in stages. But yeah, we've definitely seen some success stories. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciated this opportunity to give a little education on mental health and mental illness, and also supply you guys with resources where you can utilize it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your family. It can be a coworker that you notice, or somebody speaking to you about something, that you can give up some of this information. So I thank you for that opportunity, because the more we know, when we know better, we do better. And so we have to start from someplace, and that communication, that me being in the position that I am in, to provide the knowledge and the information, is the starting process. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'd like to thank Ms. Humes once again. Give her a virtual round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. On behalf of the 100 Black Men of North Metro Atlanta. As I mentioned earlier, this is part of our monthly health and wellness series. And next month, we'll be discussing hypertension and diabetes. Look for us on the third Tuesday of each month. Again, we'd like to thank you all for participating this evening, and have a great evening. Thank you.